Make sure my AirPods are connected. Good, okay, because every device typically wants to fight for my AirPods when I go on live. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the podcast rundown. Trending live podcasts and podcasts that are trending in my eyes. Um, this week we will be going through some of those. Let me just nope, that's my AirPods from every device right now because I need them to not try to do this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, I'm Wize VICN I host this channel. You all can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, and Twitter. At the real Wise, WIZE, because I'm special like that. You all can also follow the ICN DJ. So it's ICN DJ on Instagram, ICN underscore DJ on Twitter. We are we're all over. We're all over. We have tons of podcasts you can listen to. But yes, today this is the podcast rundown where we talk about trending topics. I'm trying to like get all my stuff situated here. Good. So this is the podcast rundown where essentially what I do is talk about podcasts that made interest or made me feel interested or stood out this week. And there were quite a few. Now, normally December is like I would say like a week period for podcasts. People are talking about Christmas, the holidays, Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and all the vibes. And then, so most of the times, like I don't listen to podcasts like that. So the podcasts that I am listening to, they have to really grab my attention. It has to stand out or be something that I'm already listening to. And pretty much that's how most podcasts work to begin with. Like most people are only listening to the podcast that interest them. They're the niche, as we say in our space. So with that being said, yes, this is the podcast rundown. Got quite a few shows to go through. But let me first step into the chat. So we got Cyber Robin Gaming says hi. Hi, my friend. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Three Fly Gamer also says hi. Welcome, y'all. I'm about to start a poll. I am the ICN DJ Wise Brissette. All of my polls are always the same. Very simple question. Are you subscribed? Super simple. Keeps it very easy for me to remember, and it's for you all to remember as well too. If you are subscribed, thank you. Make sure that you are clicking yes for that poll. If you're not subscribed, go and subscribe and come back and then click yes. Because yeah, we don't want any no's. So Three Flag Gamer says, I'm Pinder DeWallawall. Hopefully I pronounced your last name right. But thank you for joining the live today. I appreciate you. Right now, this is the podcast rundown where I talk about trending podcasts. I'm doing it right now from beautiful Barbados. This is Barbados. For y'all that don't know, you need to go and Google Barbados. Barbados. I think it was like a exchange program or something like that. But yeah, just in any event, land of Robin Rihanna Fenty, one of the best artists of our time. Anyway, moving on from that, starting off the podcast rundown, I'm going to be talking about my favorite podcast. I talk about it all the time. Elite Music Radio, episode 278 is out now. It's a 41-minute podcast mix of dance hall, piano, and other music genres. So shout out to DJ Eternity. His podcast mixes are absolutely fire. Please go check those out for sure. Check them out. Check them all out. I'm gonna back this camera up so you all aren't in my face like that. Cool, cool, cool. Push off my shirt a little bit as well. All right. Cool. Now, with that being said, Elite Music Radio is available on our channel. So If you are subscribed, perfect. All you gotta do is go look for Elite Music Radio. That's it. Elite Music Radio. Now, the best thing about our podcast and the best thing about our channel is that you can listen to our podcast. You can watch some podcasts that we have on our network. You can check out some other podcasts that we're associated with. Shout out to Carefree Black Girl and Leslie the Trees, other YouTubers that we're associated with. So yes, definitely tap in with those folks. Are you subscribed? I don't know what happened to my poll just now, but I posted it. Someone voted it and just like disappeared and never stayed up. Yeah, and it's not staying up. That's crazy. Hmm. I can see it on my computer, but I actually cannot see it happening. Hmm. In any event, cool. So moving on from that, Elite Music Radio episode 278. Check that one out. Moving on to a new podcast on the podcast rundown. I've talked about quite a few podcasts, but not this one quite yet. So, Real Notes with Cinema Side. So, Real Notes, spelled REEL, is a podcast that, it is, of course, like entertainment, but it's more so surrounding like music and maybe a little bit of like video and stuff like that. But in any event, Cinema Sai, he is a writer, talks about music. So on this episode, he interviewed Atlanta producer, label owner, and manager Pop Star Benny. Now I know Pop Star Benny because he did some work with a artist that I know. Shout out to Kwana MC. She's also the producer of Carefree Black Girl podcast. He ended up doing some beats for her that she put on her project. One of the two of her projects that came out in the last few years. So definitely shout out for that. But Popstar Benny, he has hits. He's one of those producers that's truly on that rise. And now apparently he has a new channel called Popstar FM. So hand claps for Popstar Benny. Hand claps for Real Notes. Definitely check out that episode. That's season 4, episode 42. Cool. So moving on to another episode, another podcast that I want to highlight. This one I've talked about a few times already. Bad Fuel, which is a podcast on the Revolt Podcast Network. They have a new episode that came out literally 8 hours ago called Code Language, where they talk about Drake's moves to him suing UMG, the United Healthcare CEO getting. They talk about that. Of course, there's a bunch of conversations around Jay Z and Diddy and all those things. So this week was chock full of entertainment drama. So for sure, check out Bag Fuel. They talk about it all. Shout out to Esso, shout out to Heineken, and the whole Bag Fuel team. So check that one out. You can find that episode on listen.revolt.tv or wherever you get your podcasts. Moving on to Bad Speakers Podcast, episode 161 was all about Kendrick Lamar, K Dot, and his new album GNX. So, of course, they are talking about GNX, the album. They're talking about Kendrick and Not Like Us, and allegedly the numbers being inflated by UMG, which is the base around Drake's lawsuit. He also is filing, which is the part. This is the part of this episode as well too, because of course it's entertainment news. So he has a defamation lawsuit against them because they, in his eyes, knowingly um, shared content that they knew um, was a lie. With them calling. Hmm. Sorry, my live just like dropped out. Okay, so yeah, so that is Bad Speakers Podcast. Now, moving on to a podcast that I work on primarily, Carefree Black Girl Podcast. We had an episode called Holiday Cheers, where essentially, we talked about the holidays, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning of the live. You know, During this time period, most podcasts are kind of talking about, especially like podcasts that are what I consider chat cast. it gives people the opportunity to just kind of like talk about, what's going on in their lives. And of course, for the holidays, the Carefree Black Girls wanted to talk about those things. So we did that. On that episode, we also tried Tabitha Brown's latest, some of from her latest food. And we believe we tried popcorn, and then we had some wine from Issa Rae's brand Via Ray, which was, to say the very least. But Tabitha Brown has a ton of like other like holiday items, not just like that popcorn, which is actually pretty good. On that episode, we also talked about things like the Mayo rebrand versus the Honey Pot rebrand, which both happened after there was like some online controversy surrounding the products themselves. And then Carefree Keys, which is really around saving money during a recession, which everyone is trying to do. So, they gave people ideas for meaningful gift giving without overspending. For me personally, this year I went to this place and I don't want to shout them out, but I have to. Where you been at? Well, it's technically where you been. But essentially, like you go there, you can get items for, depending on what day, you can get them for relatively affordable prices. So this was a great episode where they just kind of talked about, finding ways to still show love to people without like breaking the bank. So check that one out. That is Carefree Black Girl Podcast. This is episode 10 of season 10. The episode is called Holiday Cheers. And then finally on the for the last podcast, I'm gonna talk about the podcast rundown today. The podcast is called We Talking Boys. I talked about them about 3 lives ago or so. And this episode is called We Talking Being Respectfully Disruptive. So in this episode, they actually shot this one in Trinidad, and it was a part of a series that they're working on surrounding gender-based violence, which is essentially violence across genders. So man to woman, woman to man. Man to trans, trans to whomever. Anybody that's getting involved with this either gender-based violence or violence is based on someone's gender or gender choice. Um, so in any event, they had that conversation, of course, like I said, in Trinidad. So that was an inspiring conversation surrounding around just having to have those conversations when you tell when you're trying to buck a trend. Some people just have this idea or this mindset that like what has happened or what is current day, life, it has to stay that way. And throughout the conversation, they kind of talked about finding ways to be respectfully disruptive, finding ways to make change in a sense and to simplify it, make change or encourage change, but in the and as respectful of a manner as we can. So those are the podcasts that I'm going through today. So just to run them down again, first podcast I talked about was Elite Music Radio, episode 278. The second podcast I talked about was Real Notes with Cinema Sai. It's REEL, Real Notes. And that's season 4, episode 42, where he interviewed Pop Star Benny. The next podcast I mentioned was Bag Fuel with hosted by Esso and Heineken. Their episode Cold Language came out about 9 hours ago. Bad Speakers podcast episode 161. They talked about GNX, Kendrick Lamar's new surprise album. Carefree Black Girl podcast talked about the holiday cheers in season 10, episode 10. You can either watch that on YouTube or listen to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts at. And then finally, We Talking Boys had a podcast episode that came out 2 days ago called We Talking Being Respectfully Disruptive. So check out all those podcasts. If you are familiar with the page, you already know I'm going to take all this information and put it into the description anyway. For my people who are rewatching the live, I appreciate you all. For the ones that are rewatching the live, you'll be able to just go through, find a link to that pod, and start hitting play as soon as you would like. With that being said, my name is Wise Grisette, internationally known on the microphone as Wiz, Wizzy, and Wise. I talk all things podcast. I am the ICN DJ who runs this channel. Welcome to my channel. You can find me at The Real Wise on Twitter and Instagram. And if you have any podcast questions, make sure that you're adding them to the comments of this video or any of the podcast rundown videos because we do circle back to those and answer those questions. I'm coming on live 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Typically on Fridays, I am going live at 12, but I went on live today at 3 because I'm in Barbados. I'm in beautiful Barbados, and I got shit to do. In any event, I'm gonna catch you all on the next live. Peace.